So, good evening, everybody. My name is Fransje Molenaar. I am a senior research fellow at the Klingendaal Conflict Research Unit, where I head the Sahel Research Program. I'm filling in tonight for our Klingendaal director, Monica C., who's sick at home and she couldn't talk. So we said, okay, that's a good enough reason not to stand here tonight. So I have some big shoes to fill here. I've been invited to take over from Monica because for the past 3 years, I've led the Klingendaal research effort into migration and refugees. And so this is also very strange for me to be in this backdrop. It's so realistic and it reminds me just very much of my work. And to see that here in The Hague is very disconcerting. A big compliment, I'd say, also for the designers. It also reminds me of my last trip to a refugee camp, which was in September earlier this year, when I went to Agadez, a city in the desert in Niger, in the middle of Africa, where they just created a refugee camp for predominantly Sudanese refugees who flocked to Agadez at the start of 2018, and who are now trapped in the middle of the desert. So they built this camp some 15 kilometers outside of the city with nothing to do there. It's quite a difficult situation, especially so for children and young people. The children that are born there, they are not registered, they don't have any nationality, so that also means they don't have any rights. There are no education facilities available for children. And then also for the young people, I met a couple of young Sudanese men who even grew up in refugee camps in Chad and who decided to try and come to Europe because they really wanted to go to university and there was no opportunity for them to do that in Chad. But when they arrived in Libya, they got stuck in this horrible system that you have over there now of forced labor and detention centers. So that's how they eventually ended up or made their way to Agadez to see if they could find a better future there. And that's where they're stuck now in the desert with nothing to do. And this is a reality for so many young people, which is also why I'm very excited about today's keynote speaker, Mr. Victor Ochen, who is the Executive Director of the African Youth Initiative Network. And Victor has actually lived the reality that I just described. He was born in northern Uganda, and he spent 21 years of his life in a refugee camp there. And he grew up amidst the conflict that led to the forceful recruitment of over 60,000 children as child soldiers, including his own brother. When he was 13, Victor formed a peace club and he led an anti-child soldiers recruitment campaign. He grew up to become one of the key references in the struggle of human rights and justice in Africa. In 2015, Forbes magazine named him as one of the 10 most powerful men in Africa. And that same year he was also awarded or nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. He's also won multiple awards for his inspirational leadership for peace in Africa. Tonight, Victor will tell you a bit about his own experience in refugee camps, but also how young people view the UN and what the UN could do to engage with young people more. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, my sister, for a very generous introduction. Can you hear me in the back? Yes. Good. What a beautiful day to be here. Thanks to Humanity House for the opportunity to come and learn, share my stories, but also we learn together. And most importantly, as we are here gathered, I know in the audience is a weekend. You might, could have already been somewhere, but you chose to come and we stand around and stick together and talk, discuss around what is important in the reality of today. As it said, my name is Victor Chen. I'm really delighted to be here, and thanks to you all for showing up, to the people of this country, and to most people around the world who are engaging one way or another in this struggle. I come as somebody who wants to learn more and keep on learning by sharing more about what I can share. Also, to stand in a background that represents the life I lived not so long ago. It's a good reminder of the journey I traveled, I moved to where I am today, but also most importantly, What did I learn from my life living in conflict? As a child, I was born in northern Uganda. I spent my entire childhood struggling to define, to understand what the world means. And I couldn't, in my own opinion, in my own world, understand why I was made to live and grow up in a tent like this. Probably this is way better than what I grew up in, but you could find tent like this, having 10 children, a father, mother with 10 children in the same tent. And this was exactly distant from one tent to another. It would mean a single tent set on fire, the entire camp is burnt down. But this is the kind of life that we grew up in, and it makes a lot of difference to see that the life I lived is not the life that is long gone. It's the life being lived today in many parts of the world. I am happy and joyful at the same time that from the hardship of life, something good come out of it. It did come from my side. It can come from another side as well. I never expected at any point that I would be able to stand and speak in front of the crowd like I am today. Not because I didn't want to, but because circumstance made it reality for me. The subject matter, the theme of today, the night of conflict. It's simply a reality of conflict, the world we are living in today. On a beautiful night like we are here, we are talking about how the world could be, how the world can be a better place. But also on a beautiful night like this is a night that many people in many parts of the world are struggling to survive, are wondering if they would ever get to live to see the beautiful sunrise in the morning. So when you talk about the night of conflict, it is something so real to me. It's something so dear to me. Growing up in conflict, I built my belief, I built my faith, I built my courage. I became the most passionate person about what life is because I was always glad to live for the next 1 hour. I was always happy to survive the next landmine blowing. I was always grateful because every next 1 hour I was losing a friend. This is the life in conflict. But the night itself makes it more difficult. In stories like this, I look up to my mom, who could in all ways, even though it was just a tent we were living in, she could move every night before we sleep. She could move and stand in all corners, all access, all junction leading to our home, to stand up and pray. I saw her every single day, even if it was raining, before we could sleep. My mom would go and stand on the roads and pray, praying for our protection. And then she could make us pray that as sons and daughters, you pray that as you go to sleep, just in case you may never wake up alive again, may God take your soul. This was the kind of reality, because every night we went to sleep, the news you'd wake up to, either you wake up to run, or you wake up in the morning to find that the neighborhood has all been invaded. Friends are taken, friends are killed, family members are missing. This is the life we grew up in. This is the life I saw. But most importantly, as a child, I kept on asking myself, in this darkest moment of our life, in the life of conflict, the life of poverty, the life of war, the life of, the feeling of nobodiness, the sense of dehumanization that was increasing every new day, the question was, how long can this go? It was a question that led me to ask myself, where am I in the picture of change? And what can I do to make sure I bring an end to the life that I don't want to live? I reached a point I was sick and tired of my own suffering. And that provoked in me the thinking that maybe if I want change, I should ask myself where I'm in the picture of change. That led me to think twice. I formed a peace club when I was 13 years, primarily to challenge the situation I was going through. It led me to appreciate life. It made me realize that every single life that was available was necessary to be protected. I remember asking myself, in this kind of situation, the decision we make at night is key to determine what will happen, what you can do in the daytime. After years and years of struggling, navigating my way around, struggling with my own education, surviving abduction, landmines, sicknesses, and all forms of injustice around us, my own brother was abducted in 2003. It was on the 10th of December, which was 5 days ago. 5 days ago, when I was in northern Uganda, meeting with my father, meeting with my sister, and other brothers. My father came up with the clothes of my brother, who was abducted 15 years ago, and a sandal, and then he said, I am 78 years old right now. I hope I will see him before I die. I look forward to seeing him, but we made it a resolution that nobody is going to destroy the clothing of my son who was abducted. Let it be here. He will come back and wear them. That's the torture that my father goes through. He's afraid that he's aging up. He may never see his son again. But also, this is one story out of over 30,000 children from northern Uganda who are missing up to now. The story of my brother changed my world around. I asked myself, did I make the right choice to choose peace, even though I didn't have any reasons to not fight somebody? I was wondering, but something in me kept on telling me, you did the right choice, you made the right choices. I went on to form this organization called African Youth Initiative Network, primarily to help me talk to my fellow young people, promote among them the culture, the spirit of unity, peace, and reconciliation. But as we are doing what we are doing, it would not make sense at all to people whose life has been shattered, the victims, the women who are sexually abused, who are raped, and they're looking for how to survive for the next day. It was difficult for us to talk about peace, to talk about justice, for us to make sense to them. So when we asked them, what can we do to promote peace? They would ask us, how do you talk about peace with all these brutalities, the wounds of injustice not addressed? It became very practical to us that people needed us to make peace and justice a reality, not a mere rhetoric, not a mere talk. And then we started embarking more on mobilizing people. We would ride bicycles amidst the heavy humanitarian aid vehicles. We would ride bicycles 20 kilometers, long distance, to mobilize people to get treatment. This was the move that has helped us today. We have supported over 21,000 people, those whose lips, nose, ears were cut off. And they feel finally the peace they have wanted, the justice they wanted, the dignity they wanted, they have got it because they are healed and they can move on in life. When you talk about peace, you talk about the night, you talk about the reality, it becomes so personal. Sometimes war becomes too close to you. I remember on one fateful day, when I was doing the work I am doing always about counseling people, mobilizing and reaching to the young people who are abducted, I met this young man. He was probably my age mate. And he told me the stories, how when he was abducted, what he did, how he killed people, how he abducted people. And he told one particular story. He was explaining how he abducted my own brother. He didn't know he was talking about it. He did not realize he was explaining to me how he took my own brother. It was a very dark moment. It was a broad daylight, but I blacked out. I couldn't understand what exactly to do. I tried to jump in the car. I told him, can we cut the story short today? We'll come back tomorrow. I jumped in the car, tried to drive. I was blacking out. I couldn't know what to do with this young man. I tried to cry, I couldn't cry. But as I moved on, I reached home, I said, can I tell my father? Something in me kept saying, do not tell him. Don't tell him. Don't tell any family member. I listened to myself, and then as I was continuing, I tried to sleep at night. I couldn't sleep. I was wondering what to do with this young man. And then the next day, I went back to him, and I asked him, continue the story where he stopped yesterday. He explained it became again too bitter, too difficult for me to comprehend. I stopped, and I told him, I'll come back to you after a week. But I went back home. Much as I've been through nights of conflict, but that night was the darkest night of my lifetime. Because I reached a point I was wondering, what should I do to this young man? If I told my family members, it would have been different. If I told my other people, it would have been different. I couldn't sleep at night. I knelt down and I prayed. I said, God, I know I've reached a point that I'm weak. I can't do anything. I'm weak. And I kept on wondering, what should I do? I couldn't sleep. But I knew something was coming up. It was that night that I made a decision in my life. Probably I've made so many good decisions. But that night was the night that something in me came and said, this young man is innocent. If he was maybe a commander, if he had a command role, I would blame him more. But he was commanded to always do what he did just to survive. Something in me kept on ringing in my heart. Think about it. And the last decision I made at that night was to employ him. I went back to him after a few days, based on that decision I made that night. And I told him, I feel you are a very young, dedicated, loyal, hardworking young man. You've seen too much. You've been through too much. But you continue to demonstrate the strength that nobody else can do it. So for that reason, I think I want us to work together. I want to give you a job. He looked at me and he said, what kind of organization that gives job to people who have never been to school? I've never been to school. All I learned is I was taken, trained to be a killer, soldier. All I did was killing and destroying. But now you're saying you want to employ me. I never told him that he was talking about my brother. And then I said, no, I don't care about your level of education. All I care about is your heart. You've been through too much, but you can do so much more to help people who have been through the life you have been through. I convinced him he accepted. Not until I employed my brother as abductor, I was not at peace with myself. And I was not at peace with him. It was the decision I made that night. So it brings me to the subject. The decision we make at night, it matters. But the night, when you talk about the night of conflict, these two words, night and conflict, are a very complex situation. All my years growing in war, the most difficult moment was always at night. At night, all colors, all gender loses its distinctiveness. You just see the shadows of humanity. And you don't understand who you're dealing with. You don't know where you're running. But the question that I asked myself gave me opportunity to think about that night, a move that made me employ him to work together. And today it is doing a great job. My organization, which we founded 15 years ago, today employs over 50 people, out of which half of them are former child soldiers. If you went on, you would find young people. Some of them doesn't have fingers. They don't have lips. They don't have ears. They don't have nose. We're cut off. But they're working with us just because we believe in every life. No life can be shattered beyond importance of values. The whole idea has been, how can we help young people transform our trauma, our pain into an opportunity for leadership that will bring about sustainable change? And this has worked. We don't look at victims as victims who are powerless. We looked at them as people with experiences that we can share and learn from. They have wisdom, the strength that we can learn from, and can help us plan better to empower the society. We can't go on planning, thinking. I must say I'm also tired. I feel tired sometimes. I'm exhausted because I spent my entire childhood trying to survive conflict, making decisions that would be seen as unpopular. But I'm spending my adulthood, my adult life, healing the war wounded, treating the war victims. I'm trying to heal the society, to reconcile society. I'm living a life of conflict from the time I was born to where I am today. I am tired at the same time because I feel betrayed by international community sometimes. The system are too efficient, they're too effective to make impact to the local people. It's all about beautiful system. It's all about beautiful structure. But they don't look at people at the grassroots level as key actors, as key players, because we think we know more that we can import our knowledge and experiences. Sometimes the system is too efficient that makes us miss out on the wisdom of the people in the community. I'm tired. I feel tired because I feel betrayed by international system, international community. My story, with the background I am having, resonates the majority of the lives of people who are living the life of conflict. And it is worst at night. Can we use our energy, can we use our connection, can we use such platforms to transform the night of pain and fear, the countless night of suffering, transform it into a broad daylight of opportunity, prosperity, and peace? We can give a bright morning. We can give a bright day after the dark night of conflict, after the dark night of injustice. For too long, they have cried, they have suffered, they have called for your attention and solidarity and support. Time has come for us to transform that dark night of injustice and the dark night of bureaucracy and intolerance, of hatred, and give it the brightest day of opportunity. And this is where we can bring joy and love to the life that has suffered for far too long. I want to thank you so much for listening to me. I hope as we gather, we'll be committed, we'll renew our effort, we'll renew our commitment towards supporting people, especially the victims, the refugees. May our gender, may our color, may our geographical regions not be a barrier to changing the world. We can do it. We have done it before. We can do it again. And we can bring smile back to the life and faces of those teary people around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Victor, for such an inspirational story and also for really giving a face to the people living in situations like this. I think you really show us that the only way to get out of a conflict is for all of us to really be the best version of ourselves that we can be.